Welcome to Mentoring in Real Life, where we talk about what it takes to find and be a great mentor. I'm Angela, and together with my co-host Bill, we know the power of mentoring and what it can do in your life on both sides of the table. If you're interested in learning tips, tricks, and hearing stories about mentoring, you're in the right place. Come join us. Well, good morning, Bill. How you doing?
I've never been this happy. How about you, Angela?
I am great. Today especially, because we have a special guest on today. With us is David Boyce, who is the president and CEO of Bloom Engineering Company, a wab tech company. He's an industrial operator with deep experience leading businesses through restructuring, value creation, and the sell side of mergers and acquisitions. Now, the world of M&A is a bit foreign to Bill and me, so we're genuinely excited to learn from Dave today. Recruited by private equity in 2013 to prepare Bloom for sale, Dave led multiple sell-side processes involving both financial and strategic buyers before ultimately guiding the company through a management-led transaction and its acquisition by Wabtec in 2024. His background spans engineering, operations, and global P&L leadership across Europe, Asia, and the US, giving him a practical operator's perspective on what drives value in transactions. In looking at the span of his career, Dave has worked for engineering firms large and small, working across the United States, Germany, and Belgium. While Dave has a degree in mechanical engineering, he has long recognized the need for coaching and mentoring to grow as a multidisciplinary leader, investing in both of these areas for nearly 2 decades. He's on a mission to improve mentoring for young engineers, which we will discuss today. And Dave, we know you're an incredibly busy man. We appreciate your time and spending time with us today.
Thanks, Angela. Thanks, Bill. Good to see you both.
Yeah.
Glad to be on.
Yeah, good to see you too. And we should also reemphasize that we met Dave at a Manager Tools conference back in October of 2025 and just really had great connection and great conversation even then about the concept of mentoring and leadership development and growth. And so with that, Dave, tell us a little bit about your background beyond our introduction.
Sure. So I joke that I'm a mechanical engineer that has traded what I know for what I suspect, which means that I'm still able to grill my engineers and ask them questions that frustrate them during design review and things like that. But my background has been in large capital projects with engineering companies such as Siemens, so building power plants, building and designing power plants, both in the U.S. and then also with a short stint in Germany. Then I moved over to a Belgian-owned company and worked with them both in the U.S. and also in their Belgian headquarters. And then most recently with Bloom Engineering here in the Pittsburgh area with operations in U.S., Germany, China, and India, with a very heavy emphasis on engineering of large capital equipment that goes into making steel and aluminum currently. So the background is been very much focused on how engineers work within a business structure that is unique to large capital projects. So we're not making widgets that go onto a shelf. We're engineering projects. We're engineering things. We call it customer bespoke engineering that go into products that customers order specific to their needs. So it's kind of a unique niche of engineering. But that's generally what I have been doing for the last 25 years.
So since we're sort of focused on the mentoring part of this, and you're mentoring across, as you just described, lots and lots of different countries, which might bring with it lots and lots of different cultural challenges. Did you generally speaking, do you see differences in the way that mentoring programs are established or that you'd recommend across different cultures and so forth?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think one of the common threads that I've had has been the intercultural and international aspect of engineering and of business. Early on in my career, I was selected into a top talent program and the mentoring program. There was an official mentoring program that was part of that top talent. And one aspect of that was gauging my interest and gauging my capability towards managing and growing into a leadership role in the context of an international business. So I had already been and lived in Germany, so there was that experience set. But then it was taking what I had learned through that experience of working in an international context, and then applying that into an engineering and also a strategic marketing and a executive management role that that the mentoring program was really trying to hone and refine. So I think one of the aspects that's really critical in gauging not just the capability of a manager in the U.S. or an employee in the U.S. is not just what they are able to communicate in the technical sense. It's also understanding the importance of what's not being said. For instance, when your two individuals are talking and English is a second or a third language, you have that language barrier. You have the cultural barriers that have to be worked through. I think mentoring or coaching or soundboard for an engineer or for a manager can really help them understand why what's technically rational and technically sound to them, and that's the argument that they're trying to make, but it's just not resonating. It's not getting through. There's a gap in either trust and or understanding that's keeping that message from getting through and being effective. So in fact, just yesterday I was having a conversation with two of my managers about this exact subject, in how to get through to international personnel in our company to be more effective. And it made lots of sense how they were talking to themselves. It didn't quite get through to their counterparts in the other countries. So I think that aspect of an international or intercultural aspect for mentoring is really a key one, in addition to all of the others.
Yeah, fantastic. And so, frankly, I would think that discussion about being able to reframe what you're trying to convince your bosses or your team to do actually applies very much inside a single culture, as well as applying to an international or different cultures on the same team. Certainly, in my experience, I could see people being very frustrated and nobody ever talking to them about, well, maybe you're not framing the problem in a way that's going to resonate with the rest of the team, whether they're from a different culture or they live down the street from you. And so, do you see? I mean, I presume, our experience in the government software engineering domain was not unique. I presume that exists in almost any engineering and perhaps any professional.
Shockingly, engineers don't have a lot of formal training in communications amongst themselves or with anybody else. So I remember my foreign language training was Fortran, for instance, in college. That was what they decided was sufficient for foreign language. So I wouldn't say that communicating effectively with anyone, whether it's within an engineering department, whether it's across different groups within an engineering group, or whether it's engineering to project management or sales or finance, it's not a formal training by any sense. It's not also natural necessarily. It is a skill that can be learned and honed and developed, but it also requires a bit of a soundboard or a mirror. And I think that's where mentoring and coaching, the right mentoring and coaching, really come in, because it can be focused not in a, let's say, manager to direct report relationship. And while that can work, I think it can also be confused with some of the day-to-day activity that's happening between a manager and a direct report. And that can sometimes cloud what the real message is, when really what the mentor or the coach can do is help provide very specific feedback on that particular area, on how to be more effective when they're communicating with somebody. And that could be within an engineering department, just down the hall. That could be peer-to-peer in that sense. It could be to another department. And I think that when I'm talking with new engineers that come into the company, or I'm talking to students that are about to enter the career force, I'm emphasizing that it's not what they know, it's what they can communicate effectively about what they know that matters so much. And I think that's really where there is a gap between formal university training and any HR led or corporate training that may talk about communication. They're not necessarily emphasizing here's how to take time to understand what's happening with the other person. I think, we mentioned manager tools. One of the favorite quotes that they have is communication is what the listener is doing. Instead of focusing on what we're saying, we need to be asking questions about what that listener is perceiving in order to be more effective in getting through.
Yeah, well, that's a podcast all to itself, the communication part, and frankly, fundamental in virtually every industry, every relationship for that matter. And so, thanks very much. You're sort of seeding the ground for future podcasts, for sure. Because I think your point's very well taken in lots of corporate training, even, and I'm sure that most of us have taken some sort of a communication training, but it talks about those things, but the mentoring aspect of that is to make sure that it's not just about the communications exercise, it's the change of heart, change of attitude about what's going on. And sometimes, in my experience, young engineers sort of need to be coached and mentored into thinking much more broadly about the team and not acknowledging, even if they think they're the smartest person in the room, it actually doesn't matter if they can't convey that in a meaningful way to the rest of the team, that they have a really, really good idea.
That's right.
And so that's a appreciate that's worth a foot stomp or two for sure. The other piece that you brought up that I wanted to sort of talk about a little bit more, because we've actually explicitly stated this as a concern. You talked about the fact that the mentoring programs often are focused on the top performers, and I get that. But what about if it's the top 5%? What about the other 95% of the people? And how do you know they couldn't be the top performers with the appropriate mentoring and coaching? And so, how do you look at that for the broader part of the company?
Yeah, I think that's a great observation because it comes down to what the motivation and intention of the mentoring program is, right? For that particular one, it was to help develop Siemens' top talent program. So it's understood within that context. And in the broader sense, take my engineering organization now, we're looking at redeveloping the engineering program, how we bring engineers in from a university into our engineering department, and how do we enable them to gain the kind of experience that really develops them into very capable, very useful engineers. Because what we know is I can bring, if my activity level ramps up, I can bring a new engineer in from the outside. But what happens is the effectiveness of my engineering team goes down while the engineers are training up the new engineer. It's very difficult to find somebody with the really specific competencies and capabilities that enable them to hit the ground running, so to speak. So that means that if I bring somebody new in off the street, it takes a bit of time, and that means that I'm going to be ineffective for a period of time. So what I'm looking at is how do we develop our engineering development program in such a way to enable rotations through specific disciplines, which is not new, but also to enable the development of that individual, of each of the individuals that's going through that program, all the way through that life cycle, by pairing them up with the right person. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be in with an engineer. It doesn't have to be a specific executive leader. It may be somebody that has a passion for growing people. And certainly, I think one of the aspects that I see is that mentor. It's not just that we're pairing up the engineer with a mentor. It's making sure that the mentor has the training, has the aptitude, has the desire and motivation to really grow people and see that growth in people, that makes he or she a really effective mentor. And I think that piece, pairing that mentoring relationship together, is what helps us see a longer retention of engineering candidates, through to the first 2 years of their engineering career, through to a longer career as it potentially goes into diverse paths, whether it's into engineering and design engineering, or it's into project management or sales or a business role that we have. So we see a connection to the mentoring program as a fundamental aspect that we want to develop to furthering that engineer's career through the business.
And so you're applying that broadly across, your entire engineering pool.
We are. We're starting. We're starting slowly, and we want to grow. First of all, the overall team that's going to be receiving it. We don't want to move too fast and outrun or outpace our skis, so to speak. So it's identifying. The first step for us is identifying what that program looks like, including the rotation, the discipline rotation, including the mentors that we want to develop as mentors, because it's a development project and a development program from them as well. So that's the next step. And then once we have that in place, then we sandbox it with the first few candidates. So this is very much a real-time event and real-time activity for us.
So what are
Fantastic.
you
Go
finding
ahead.
then? What are you finding as being some of the key areas that mentors, you talked about training mentors. What are you focused on with preparing mentors to be effective?
That's a really good question. I think that there's a bit of learning that we want to have, a little bit of learning and development in the selection of mentors. At a minimum, they have to be perceptive. And that means that they have to be able to ask good questions and listen to the answers. And with those answers, then ask further questions. Because what we want to have happen is not just for somebody to say, here's what I did, here's how I did it, here's my growth path, here's my career path, here's what I want to do. What do you think of that? That's not really an effective mentor-mentee relationship. The right the right relationship that I see is, tell me more about what interests you. Tell me more about what is it that frustrates you? How are you communicating with this individual and that individual? Where do you feel like you're successful in your interpersonal relationships or the interdepartmental relationships? What do you think about the nature of the company and the strategy of the company? Where do you think that fits in? So it has to be somebody that's capable of asking questions from a very broad range, but then giving the candidate the time to think about that answer, maybe go away, think about the answer, and come back and talk about it. And it really has to be somebody that's conversational in the sense of asking questions, perceiving what the mentee is talking through or dealing with at that time. So if we're talking DISC, it's got to be somebody that's not so high D, so high C that they're just focused on, all right, I have 30 minutes and it's minute 29 and we're about to wrap up. It really has to be somebody that's a little bit more focused on the individual and how to grow those people. So it's not a simple answer to say, here's the classic pattern or here's the mold that we're going to make mentors out of. It's a bit like we know them when we see them, but I think we can develop mentors is probably the most important point.
So you're in the first instance, you were talking about you don't want somebody who's saying, here's the checklist to get to the role you want, because getting to a specific role and being effective in that role is not a checklist format, right? There's a whole person aspect to it. There's not only the technical skills, but also can they be, speaking of DISC, can they be inspirational? Can they motivate teams to work together and people to want to come motivated to the job, right? Can they have that S side as well, where they can sense when somebody is frustrated or when people are having some conflict? Can they read that better, right? And so you're trying to find mentors that have embodied that, as well as having the technical skills to be able to support somebody in their career growth in both ways, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, it certainly feels like you're when you're talking about mentoring training, it's you don't need to give them more schooling on engineering to do better mentoring, right? They have the engineering background. It's I guess some folks refer to it as emotional intelligence, but it's a set of behaviors that will increase the connection with the people that they're mentoring, and it's a set of behaviors that's going to make sure that they start by listening as opposed to always talking first, kind of things, which has been a point of emphasis of ours for a little while now. I'm a big 7 habits guy, and so habit 5, seek first to understand and then to be understood. So it seems to me you're capturing a lot of things that we've talked about, but it's really fundamental for mentoring in any industry, in any domain, I would say.
Yeah, I view it kind of analogous to driving a car. And I have 2 teenage sons, and they both enjoy driving on driving simulators and playing video games. And what I've told them prior to going out and actually driving a real car is that there's some real fundamental differences in terms of the inputs that you get from the car, right? The physics that you get from a car. It's
Right.
one thing to see things on a screen. It's going to be very similar to seeing that through the windshield, but analogous to the mentoring program is providing that additional set of feedback that you're going to get, the feeling of the steering wheel, the feeling of the car as it rolls to the left or to the right, or when you're braking and you feel that physics and feedback coming through. That's how I view the mentoring program. It's additional sets of inputs that are all around you and are happening all around you, but it may not be meaning the right thing to that mentee. At that time, the mentor is helping link all those things together and giving the mentee a much clearer, maybe overall picture of how to interpret those things and a context to interpret those things, helping the mentee make better decisions about their career, about better equipping them to be in communications and resolving difficulties and resolving communication breakdowns that may come up. So it's a wide range of things that I see as coming up, and the mentors really providing that feedback and that additional signal to the mentee to enable them to just be overall better.
Taking that driving a car analogy a step further, I've talked about that when it comes to leveraging the skills of how to be coach like as a leader, or even how to be an effective mentor, where your boys are taking their training. They're not only doing virtual reality of how to drive a car, but they're taking academic training, right, on what happens if you're driving on ice and how to react, with the steering wheel and the brakes, and don't hit the brakes and all of that, right? And then it's a much different story once you put keys in the ignition and actually start driving the car, right? The actual practical application of those skills is a much different story. And it's similar to reading a book on how to be an effective mentor and
Right.
applying those skills. The application of the skills is a skill in itself to learn. It's an art form because you have all of these different inputs, i.e., behaviors, reactions, responses from people and such. And how do you respond to those as a mentor?
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. When the openness for the desire, let's say the desire for understanding and how to be and how to develop as a mentor exists, then the things that are in the book make so much more sense. So that training and that book knowledge is available, but that doesn't in and of itself make the mentor a better mentor. So I think, and this is certainly I think why what you do is so critical and so important. It's not just reading a book. It's active learning, an active learning program for the mentors that really is going to make the mentoring program that much more effective. So putting the mentor into a real life scenario and having them understand what they need to be looking for, not just from the company standpoint, but really to develop the individual and that mentee, that makes that connection that much stronger, and the trust between the mentor and mentee that much stronger. That makes the overall relationship better. That makes the whole program that much stronger and effective.
I don't think you're talking about something that's so unique to your environment. It seems to me that getting good mentors and identifying them and training them is probably a challenge for lots of folks. So, how are you picking the mentors that you want to build this program around?
That's actually the process that we're going through right now. One of the aspects of that is what we do a very simple performance evaluation system. There's, of course, the corporate program that we use, but within my management team, something that we have done for a long time is evaluating on a performance behavior matrix. Performance is pretty simple. It's how well do they do their job? How, what things are they getting done? And on the behavior axis is how well do they get it done with others? And in another question, how many of their behaviors do I want others to replicate or emulate? And so the people that certainly the pool of talent that we want to identify as prospective mentor candidates are going to be on that higher behavior or emulation axis. And so those are initially the candidates that we are targeting. And there's the set of behaviors. What do they look like? Why do we want them to behave? What behaviors do they have that we want other people to replicate? Those are the kinds of evaluation criteria that we're going through right now.
Are you looking for people who have reached out to say, hey, I'd like to participate in the program? Are you doing kind of an evaluation of your, leadership team overall and reaching out to them directly? Or is it a mix of both? How are you kind of stepping into identifying these mentors other than, the evaluation criteria that you just outlined? Then what's the next step?
We find that just springing on them unawares works best. No,
Engineers love that, Dave. I love it.
No, I think that the first step is what we just went through, and this is all very, very recent. We identified that we have a problem, we have a defect, and in classic DMAIC, we want to make sure that we understand what that defect is and define what that problem statement is, and then take the right steps to fix it. So we're in that process right now of defining that we want the engineers to rotate through multiple disciplines. We want to establish a mentoring program, and that means that we have to establish the pool of mentors. So we're at that stage now of defining what criteria are we going to evaluate the mentors by, and then how are we going to develop those mentors first? How are we going to put those mentors into the development program first? Maybe it can be sequential. But more likely, we're going to at least begin the development of those mentors once we've identified them. We're certainly looking at the pool of at the executive managers or the senior level managers. But because we're taking a broad-based approach, it's not exclusively focused on developing into an executive role. So we have a broader base of talent that we can pull from and develop. So that may not be the full answer as we develop this program. We may refine it. And in fact, I expect that we're going to refine it as we go, but that's the stage that we're at today.
So if you were successful in a year from now,
we will be.
When you are successful, a year from now, what will your mentoring program look like?
What does that look like? That's the best way to define it, because I talk all the time. If we plant the flag a year or 5 years in the future and it's successful, what are all the things that we did to make it successful? So in that light, we will have a pool of mentors that have been identified, will have been trained. They have the right aptitudes. They have a desire for growing and developing people. And we will have had at least the first wave of engineering talent, which is likely to include individuals that we already have within the business today that are going through that program. And we're seeing positive impact from that mentoring program. What does that positive impact look like? I'm not looking at an employee opinion survey. I'm looking for, or even an engagement survey, I'm looking for an increase in the effectiveness of the engineer, first of all. What does that look like? It looks like them not just doing better at their current role, but them thinking through and thinking through what it takes to be better at their current role and their next role. But it's also more effective communications within their departments, outside of their departments. And I think that's going to be really a key gauge, the how effective the communication is among the departments, and we're able to see how those individuals are communicating, working with other departments, solving problems proactively, taking on challenges to solve business processes, not just engineering problems, but business processes, and making our work get done faster. So more efficient processes. I think we'll see a couple of those things as key indicators of how effective the mentoring program is working. So it's not just simply saying, how happy are you with the company today? How effective do you think the mentoring program is? I'm looking for the reason why we're doing the mentoring program in the first place, and that's where we want to see better communication. We want to see increased focus on how do I fix these things that affect upstream or downstream departments. That's what we're looking for from the that's the reason why we want that mentoring program in place.
Would you also say that there's a retention aspect of this?
Absolutely. We've been fortunate to have a fairly high retention rate overall, but it it's not it's not enough to say we're going to wait until somebody leaves or doesn't leave to judge whether or not the retention is where we want to look. I think we want to look at the indicators, specifically where maybe some individuals have left because they were able to choose opportunities that were more interesting to them. I want to look at what would have made it more interesting for them to remain with us instead of to leave. So those are some of the key indicators. Are we giving them challenging work? We providing them with the right interest level in the roles that they're in today? Those are those key leading indicators, not just did we keep them or have they not left yet? That's kind of how I'm looking at the retention rate. We will absolutely improve retention rate by focusing on things that improve those leading indicators.
You mentioned
Yeah.
early in the conversation that you were looking for essentially this mentoring program to start young engineers, potentially even when they're still in school or not long after they're out of school, right? Earlier. And
Yes.
so, how are you then? We talked a little bit about the development of mentors. What about identifying the prospective mentees? How are you approaching that?
Yeah, that's obviously the other part of the equation. I think the approach that I like to take is not being so selective as the program that I went through, but as we talked about earlier, I'm interested in applying it to the field of engineers that we're bringing in. The reason is if we're making the decision to hire them, I want to make sure that these are people that we are in the selection of them, that we are saying, we like you. We think that you can do great things for us. You seem to like us and are willing to, come work for us for, spend your best time with us. We want to continue that relationship. How do we do that? And that really is why I see the mentoring program, in addition to the rotational and development, other aspects of the development program, as key to retaining those engineers through the life cycle of their career for as long as possible, and not just leaving it to, we have engineering positions here, and if you stay with us for long enough, then you and there's an opening, you might be able to get into this role over here, but just be patient and just hold fast, and if you stay long enough, good things might happen. That's not the approach that I want. I want for those candidates who have chosen us and we've chosen them to feel like the company is, but really people are interested in their development. People are interested in what they want to do. People are interested in bringing their best out, and that in return we get their best, and we're getting from them more interest in making the company better and making the company a better place to be as a person and as a group of individuals. So I think that's how I see the mentoring program applying to a larger swath of the population, including right when they join us right out of university.
So you brought us back to the retention conversation, and certainly in a lot of the technology sector these days, I'm going to assert that a lot of folks do not have your approach. They're happy to put people in a position and use them up for a couple of years. If they leave, that's fine. It's just it's part of our hiring model that we use people up. They get tired of it and they leave for something else. And there's this acceptance of a constant rotation of the workforce. And you've identified a very, very conscious choice to make it different and say, I'd love for, if I'm picking these people, I'm already investing in them. I'd like them to stick around for a long time if they're great contributors. Do you think that's unique to your approach? Or do you think that that's a more, maybe there's just, the news media covers the rotational aspects, but maybe there's something else going on in real life?
Certainly, bigger numbers and bigger names make for better stories. So I think that's one of the reasons why we're going to hear about things, especially because it's more newsworthy to talk about churn and to talk about that high impact of churn. But I've been in large companies and I've been in small companies, and we certainly are a smaller business now. It is more difficult to attract and recruit compared to a larger company that has lots of different opportunities that an engineer can choose from. That may be something that really is attractive that we can't necessarily offer. What we can offer is really deep experience and the opportunity to move from engineering, from engineer just out of college up into head of sales. My VP of sales started here directly out of his days in university, and has been with the company for over 30 years. So there's that opportunity that may not exist in a company that says, you know what, we've decided that we have been going in this direction. We're now going to pivot to this other direction, and we don't necessarily need this department anymore. So there's a certain attrition that we're going to cause, aka layoffs. We haven't had layoffs in more than 12 years because we manage the business proactively. We try to manage with the market in mind, but also making sure that we operate the business very efficiently and very effectively to not have sudden increases in hiring and then decrease in hiring, aka layoffs. That means that we have to do things a little bit different. Does that mean that we are unique? It's hard for me to judge. I think that it's definitely unique compared to larger companies where they may be willing to say, you know what, let's take a dragnet approach. Let's bring lots of people in, and it's okay if we get a 10% attrition rate over time because we know that we're going to be bringing more people in over time. We'll make it up with volume or with sheer numbers. I look at it as let's make sure that we spend the right amount of time on the hiring and recruiting process to bring the right candidates in, whether they're in university or whether they have experience. Let's bring the right candidates in that really want to make a difference, that have the curiosity, that have the aptitude for learning and growth and development and interaction with small teams, and the appeal that a small business has, a small company has, the nimbleness that we have. That's what I'm looking for, because then that's somebody that wants to grow, wants to develop, and that is something that can have a multiplicative effect on the engineering department, but then on the business as well. And it's just it's a different focus that small companies have, but that's because they may not have the allure and the ability to attract large groups of talent that a large company does.
Well, but it also feels like you end up having to sort of mentor folks into that attitude as well to sustain the company. It resonates a lot, frankly, for being able to say, you know, this is the kind of people we want, and it's the kind of people we want to grow because we have a much longer horizon than, well, if you're gone in 2 years, who cares, right? I mean, it seems like you're saying those things. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it feels that way.
No, it's exactly right. We do a red light, green light process, and it's another abstract process that's not typically talked about in performance review systems. But the red light, green light is, here are the people that have left over the years, and that either they have left of their own accord or we helped them leave.
Right.
And what did they, if they wanted to come back, would we open the arms, welcome them back with open arms, or would we say, we think We think you're doing just fine where you are. And, coming from that list of why would we not want to bring that person back, or why would we want to bring that person back, it unlocks a set of values. It unlocks a set of attributes or characteristics, behaviors, if you will. And a negative behavior is just a positive behavior in reverse. And we then have a set of things that say, when people are doing these things, they're really positive and they're going to do really well for the business. And that can translate into hiring criteria. And that can translate into how we give feedback to individuals. When you're doing this, you're doing really well. We like it and we want more of it. And that's how we want to approach talent development. That's how we want to approach recruiting and retention. And it's a little bit uncharacteristic, say, to the typical performance review system.
It's obvious as a CEO of a small company, you are very much focused on the people development side. I'm certain you're also focused on the metrics, the valuation, the financials, all of that, the projections. And it's clear you spend a lot of your energy on people development, on retention, on making it a culture that invites people to want to be a part of and then stay a part of. And I know we talked in your intro that it's something that has been a part of you for more than 20 years. What initiated this acknowledgement that it is beyond just good engineering, it is also good people development?
It's getting it wrong. Good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment, right? So no, I think in some aspects it's falling into a couple different traps. One of them is when you are a manager and you have a position that you need to fill, and you see the resume, and the resume just looks like exactly what you need to have, and you bring that individual in spite of any objections, in spite of any internal, I don't know if this is going to be the right person. When you bring that person in, and very quickly you realize that that person is not the right fit, it's rarely because of their technical capability or incapability that that person is not going to work. It much more often is that they don't gel with the team. They don't gel with the culture and with the those values that I just talked about. And the fact is, everybody knows it. Sometimes they knew it during the interview process, and management, myself included, tried to say, yeah, but look at this resume. She's going to be fantastic. Look at everything that she has done. She's got experience on this system that we use and that system that we use. And so we're finding all of the reasons why they should be perfect. And then we're ignoring, or we didn't interview or didn't expand the selection criteria to really understand, okay, is this person going to be a good fit, and how do we know? How are we interviewing? We can call it behavioral-based interviewing. We can call it lots of things. But the reality is, do we really know how to interview and select somebody when they're selling themselves in the interview, and we're trying to sell the company, and we're trying to sell and fill that position? It's tapping the brakes and making sure that we're hiring slow and hiring the right person. That's the first and foremost aspect to it. That I've gotten wrong enough times to know what I want to do differently. And I still will get it wrong, because it's human nature that you have a position, you want to fill it. The reality is, you make sure that you have a really robust hiring process in place first, to make sure that you're bringing in the right people, and that those individuals have the best chance of fitting within the team. That, to me, is the absolute most important aspect of this. Then, once they're in, how do we make sure that they are developing into part of the team? How do we make sure that we are telling them, not only did we want you during the interview process, and we continue to want you by paying your salary, but we're showing that we want you in developing you as an individual to be more effective in this. And I think, linking it back to the whole point of what we're talking about today, I think that's an important aspect of a mentoring program. And where we have been maybe informal in the past, we're taking our business through a process of being formal about it, bringing in a formal mentoring program. And I think that's a key aspect of where we're going to be in the future.
Yes, I would tell you, you're actually pointing some things that I wish I had done differently in the past, and I appreciate it because I think it's a good learning opportunity for anybody who's watching. The thought about the hiring practice is it's not just about their technical capabilities, that it's about their fit for the culture in your organization, and culture, of course, is defined by behaviors. And so trying to figure that out, and also building the structure in your hiring processes and your hiring organizations. As you get bigger, there are HR organizations that become bigger and bigger as well. How are we making sure that they understand the importance of that as we're trying to build the workforce, the behaviors and the culture that we want to have exist at our company should be helping to drive the people that we want to hire, of course. And because we've talked a lot about mentoring the people once they're here, but there's sort of an aspect of that about making sure that the people that are doing the hiring processes understand that culture, as well as the people who are actually the workers across delivering whatever the product is. The hiring folks have to be part of that culture as well. And so
Absolutely.
mentoring those folks as to these are the things we're looking for, and it isn't just don't just show me their transcript from college and say, look, they're a perfect fit. Uh, because as you can imagine, in government organizations, it often is all about the transcript for a fresh college graduate, and almost never about any of the other soft skills that we're talking about. And so you're making a terrific point. How are you making sure the rest of the hiring organization, if this is even a problem for you, because clearly the CEO is on board, you're clear about it. How do you make sure the rest of your organization is just as clear as you are?
That is that is another experiential aspect of what I have found. It's great for me to have an idea, and it may be that everybody below me or behind me is saying, yep, go, Dave," and we're right behind you. Sometimes we're well right behind you. Keep going. Um,
They're
so
back there
I
smoking a cigarette, just waiting.
So I think from my own personal experience, and knowing my weaknesses, I love the value of a great idea. And then it's making sure that I have the people with me that are taking those ideas and putting them into action. That it's not just me trying to champion an idea and through brute force or sheer force that I'm just going to push this through. What I want is for my management team, my executive team, to really understand, get it, embrace it, want to support it. And that means that I am very open with my management team to say, all right, look, I think this is a great idea. I'm looking at you to beat it up, because if it's not a great idea, then you're not going to support it and you're not going to push it forward. And then it just stays an idea. Or worse, it goes out as a plan that should have stated an idea and it just dies. And the team is left thinking, all right, here comes another great acronym from Dave. And just give it a couple of months, it'll die out. It'll die off, and we'll be on to the next thing. It really is making sure that the management team, including all the direct managers, really understand a bit of that why. Why are we doing this? But it's taking time up front to beat it up and make sure that it is not just a good idea, but it is also the right time to introduce something. Because frequently, and I'm the worst at this, it's determining when is the right time to implement this next great program. Because I tell my managers, one of the most important things for you to do is to know what to say no to. And the reason is there's no shortage of really great ideas to implement, whether you're reading Harvard Business Review or you're reading a technical journal or you went to a Manager Tools conference or you're listening to a podcast. There's no shortage of good things to do. The problem is you can't do everything well. You can really just focus on doing a couple of things really, really well. And that's far more important than doing a lot of things in a half you know what way. It's imperative to managers, especially starting at the leadership level, to say, that's a great idea. and it's not yet time. We need to get this thing done first. So it's, to answer your question, Bill, it's making sure that the management team has beat it up and feels like they are part of the process of determining what the idea should be and how it should manifest and roll out, and that they are also on board because the timing is right.
Well, I got to say, you're demonstrating some phenomenally good mentoring in the way that you're exemplifying the behaviors that you want out of the team. I can't swear that you're doing that, Dave, but it's sure. But if you are, I need to applaud that very publicly. It's incredible to talk about the big boss saying, "So I got this great idea, but I want you all to beat it up, and I'm not. I don't. That's not pro forma. I need you to say what's wrong with this, and how can we improve it, and is it the right time, and all that stuff." That you're demonstrating. Frankly, in my opinion, you're demonstrating how to mentor with your own behaviors, particularly for the senior leadership team.
I try to avoid do as I say as often as I can.
Yeah, yeah. A favorite mentor of mine, whom I've never met, but I know her through her daughter, it said, your actions are speaking so loud, I can't hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I always love that, and I think you're exemplifying it extremely well, sir.
And I have one more big question before we wrap up. When you, I also am aware that you are heavily involved in coaching. You receive coaching. You're a part of a coaching peer group and so forth. How do you determine when your leadership team? How do you recommend to them coaching or mentoring? When is it a coaching kind of scenario? When is it a mentoring kind of scenario?
I've got to give a lot of great props to the folks at Manager Tools for laying out just a super simple and very easy to implement coaching model that all managers need to be doing. If you're not doing it, start. So coaching is doesn't require the coach to be better at all of the tasks or all of the capabilities. Tiger Woods had a golf coach. That golf coach was not going to go out there and beat Tiger Woods on any given day. But the coach was seeing things that the employee is doing in a context of here's how you can do it better. Or if there's a developmental opportunity, whether it's how you present, or it's how to do this particular type of calculation, or how to do a design review, how to run a management meeting, how to have an interaction with a customer. Those are all very skills-based opportunities for development, meaning you have a level of a skill today, and we collectively, you, my employee, and me as your coach or as your manager, we want to get that better. There are specific things that you can do to develop that skill to be better. Those are coaching opportunities, and they're very, I think, when done best, they're very focused on a coach observing a skill and saying, here's how we're going to build that skill to be better. So that is very necessary in a coach / manager direct report relationship to improving every single individual direct report's capability. The mentoring program I view a little bit different, and that's where it's those are things where the mentee is going to bring up things that they might not with their manager. The idea is I don't look at the manager as being the mentor. That's a different kind of relationship. That's the, as they like to say, that's the "I can fire you" written across the forehead between the manager and the direct report. That's not the kind of relationship I think that works best for mentor. The mentor is one, as I said earlier, that is able to ask questions, listen, provide feedback, and provide a sounding board, provide additional feedback and input to the mentee to enable them to make better decisions in their interaction with others, in their career development, and how they may chart their own career development. And I think it's linked with the manager, but it's not supplanting that manager direct report relationship. So that's how I view the difference between the objectives of a mentoring program and the objectives of a coaching interaction, which should be regular and ongoing with employees.
Awesome. Bill, anything else that you wanted to ask?
No, I think you've covered it very well for the purposes of what we're trying to get to. This has been a superb interaction, and I can see that you're very, very committed to making sure that the company has a long-term view, that it's growing its workforce. You're a hell of an example for a whole lot of senior managers, and we certainly appreciate your time today.
Dave, was there anything else that you wanted to bring up that we missed?
I'm sure there's a lot of things that we could spend a lot of time talking through, and maybe that's fodder for next discussions. I can't say enough about how much I appreciate talking about these things, because what I have found is the process of talking about these kinds of issues in these kinds of programs and developments with people that do what you do really helps open up ideas and open up concepts about how I'm thinking about things. So as a direct example, the reason that I'm talking with my management team about developing the mentoring program that I've outlined is simply because we talked about it, and we talked about it in the context of how it integrates within not just an engineering organization, but I think a lot of organizations. And that helped refine the thinking that I had about it. So I really do value the discussion that we've had, the chance encounter that we had at the conference, and I think the subsequent conversations have been fantastic. So I really appreciate it to both of you.
Of course, and we hope the conversations will be ongoing.
Likewise.
Yeah. Well, with that, thank you for listening to this episode of Mentoring in Real Life. If you have thoughts or questions, feel free to leave us a comment or send us an email, which we've included in the show notes. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, rate the podcast, and share with a friend. Until next time, help others climb.